welcome back to the RedBeard Outdoors podcast. It's Jonathan, your host, and today I brought a special friend of mine, guest here on the podcast, and we'll talk a little bit about him in just a minute. But I wanted to say welcome back to everyone that's been listening. I really appreciate your support, and if you're new, you're in for a treat. This is a good podcast here where I interview one of my friends and some struggles that he's overcome and how he lives his best life out there in Colorado. But here at the RedBeard Outdoors podcast, we talk about health, fitness, the outdoors, and family, kind of those three things umbrella, pretty much my life. And so I like to share that with you just in the hopes of inspiring you to also get out and live and love your life. And that's what I'm here for. So I'm also over on Instagram at red.beard.outdoors, Facebook as well. If you would like to make some changes in your nutrition or fitness and want some help getting on the right path or joining me in my personal journey, you can also join our private Facebook group, which is the RedBeard's Fit Crew. And I'd love to have you over there. So shoot me a message and I'll get you those details and that information. The links are also below in the show description, along with any other companies that I trust, that I personally use, and that I work with. And they trust me enough to give you guys a little discount code in some of the links below. So check that out. So today we have Jonathan Grant, and he's a guy that I met during the MBA program at the University of Utah. And he has a passion for the outdoors. He does mountain biking. He's done a couple of charity events where he raises money and goes, and he recently did, I want to say it was a 50K mountain bike ride, super intense. And but he's overcome some amazing things in his life where he was involved in, and I'll let him tell his story a little bit better. And I was actually a little surprised that he went into a lot of detail that I didn't know previous to this podcast and this recording. So I appreciate him and him sharing his story as to how he was able to overcome many things that grip people throughout their entire lives. He didn't let that hold him back, and he makes a daily promise to himself. He wakes up every morning and makes a commitment to not fall back into those same old habits. And I'll let him go into that and how he overcame those struggles to be living his best life out in Colorado. So without further ado, here is Jonathan Grant. All right, well, we got Jonathan Grant here, a good buddy of mine that I met in the MBA program at the University of Utah here with us today. And I'm just going to ask Jonathan a little bit about his journey here. Obviously, being a fellow Jonathan, he's living his best life and enjoying living out in Colorado, where there's so many things that you can do as far as the outdoors. But I don't know, give us a brief rundown real quick, John. How did you get into I don't know, just maybe your background. Give us some of your background.
Yeah. First, thanks for having me. I've been listening to the podcast since around the time it started, and it's really progressed. So it's kind of an honor to be involved in it. So thanks for having me. But I'm originally from Colorado. Lived here till I was about 10, and then moved out to Utah. Actually, about an hour north of where you live in Ogden. Lived there till I was about 20. And then went to Kansas City, where I went to college. And really, I always knew I wanted to get back home to Colorado, where all my family was, and the outdoors. And Kansas City is a fun city, but they don't have much in terms of the outdoors. So I knew that wasn't going to be my forever home. And took me a little bit longer than I had planned to get back out here to Colorado. But I've been back here about 10 years, and all of my family's here except my brothers. So I feel pretty blessed to have all of them really close and get to see them pretty often. So I'm happy to be where I am.
Yeah. So that's awesome. Growing up in Colorado, what were some of the things that maybe you did? Was it with your family, friends, kind of a mix of everything, or just by yourself that you got into mountain biking? What are some of the things that you did growing up?
Really, I wasn't too into the outdoors growing up. I mean, the town I lived in Colorado when I was younger was out on the Eastern Plains. So it was kind of a farm community. We did some hunting and things like that, but I was young enough that really, I think the biggest extent that we really did was like cottontail rabbit hunting. So that was a pastime that my grandpa and I shared that, I'll always remember those times with him. Um, but it really wasn't until, I mean, even when I lived in Utah, I feel like I didn't really take advantage of the outdoors like I should have. It probably wasn't until a little bit after college when I came back to Colorado when I really started taking advantage of everything around me. There was such beautiful country when I lived in Ogden, just north of you in Salt Lake, and I go back now, and I just have a different mindset now about life and everything, and I just think like, God, this is paradise, and I didn't take advantage of any of that. I mean, it's just right in your backyard, and I just didn't didn't take advantage of it, but definitely am now.
Oh yeah, for sure. And yeah, I don't when I picture Colorado, I picture like Colorado Springs and Denver. So I forget there's an eastern part of Colorado that's a little flat. But that's cool. And definitely yeah, Ogden's got some good, from what I understand, some good snow sports, skiing and stuff. I'm not really into that, but um yeah, so okay, so growing up on the eastern plains of Colorado, then Ogden, and you still weren't really into the outdoors very much. And in Kansas, you realize how flat the world really can be.
Yeah.
And then you went back to Colorado. So, what got you into wanting to take advantage of just being outside? I mean, what drew you to the activities that you love?
Well, I mean, I really got some good advice from my brother-in-law, Josiah. When I moved back here to Colorado, I was still with a girl that I had been with for I think close to about 5 years, and she stayed in Kansas City when I made that move. The goal was that she was going to eventually come out about a year later and live with me here in Colorado. But really, I mean, looking back now, it was a very toxic relationship, and we both weren't very happy. So in that year's time where we were doing long distance, things really crumbled, and I had put all of my eggs into that basket in terms of, this was going to be the girl I was going to be with. And when that was gone, I really felt lost. And so my brother-in-law Josiah, we were hiking down in Salida, and we got to talking about it. And him being a little bit older than I was, I asked him, what do you have any advice for me? And he said something that kind of always stuck with me, and is that, dive headfirst into the things that you love and that make you happy. Everything else is going to come. I mean, if you're doing the things that make you happy, you're going to be a better version of yourself. That's going to attract other people. So don't go out necessarily looking for a new girlfriend to heal your broken heart. Just make yourself happy, and um, being that I was kind of new to the area, I'd only been here less than a year when he gave me that advice. I bought myself a mountain bike not long after that, and I've been snowboarding since I was about 10. So I guess in my time in Utah, I was taking a little bit of advantage of the outdoors, mostly with snowboarding, but started doing that a heck of a lot more, and really with part of that toxic relationship, there was a lot of drinking going on. We both worked in the bar industry, and we really kind of identified our, I look back now and I kind of can see how much of that alcohol and party guy was part of my identity for a lot of years. And after that breakup, my health was terrible. I don't quite remember what I was weighing, but it was much heavier than I am now. And so just to try to improve myself and make myself happier with who I was as a person physically and how I felt, I joined a CrossFit gym. And here in Colorado, there's a very I imagine it's probably true with a lot of CrossFit gyms, but it's really tight knit community, and a lot of the people are very outdoor minded. So pretty quickly, I was making a lot of new friends that, hey, you want to go do this after the workout tonight? Go do on this hike, or making weekend plans to go do 14ers or things like that. And so I think it was a combination of how I was trying to better myself, and that's just kind of what you do here. I was lucky to find some good friends that kind of took me under their wing and made me feel like home at the gym.
Awesome. Yeah, I can relate to that. I'm starting to sip the Kool-Aid a little bit of that CrossFit lifestyle, and it's hitting my competitive side a little too hard. I was actually talking with Dan from Elk Shape, and is Dan the Fitness Man is what it goes by outside of Elk Shape, and he he's kind of pushing me a little bit. He's like, because he knows how competitive I am. And he told me, he was like, you need to go sign up for competition. And I was like, not quite ready. I'm still working on my muscle ups. And he was like, dude, you will exponentially increase in your ability to do things once you sign up. Just that competitive nature that you have. And I was like, so I'm teetering with that right now. I always laughed about it because I was a traditional lifter, and I dabbled in powerlifting for a little bit, but um, yeah, it's definitely, there's a sport side to CrossFit, and I agree. There's a lot of people that, especially if you get with a good community. Obviously, there's bad apples everywhere, but if you get a good trainer, and there's definitely that tight knit community where they all drink the Kool-Aid of CrossFit, and but yeah, that's awesome. That's cool to hear. So you got into mountain biking, and I know that's a whole thing. I'm not super into that because my balance is terrible. Um, and so that's not, I don't get crazy into it. I enjoy a little bit of downhill, but probably not anything that you do. I'm not nowhere near as good as you at that. So, what do you like so much about mountain biking? What's something that you enjoy there?
Really hard. That's what I like about it. It's a challenge every single time. I mean, my skills as a biker have really grown in the last probably 3 years because I put a lot of effort into getting better. It gets to a point, I think, when I'm the type of person, I get a little frustrated. Maybe it's a guy thing, but I get frustrated when I'm not good at something, and I always feel like I can be better. And so, something that you say a lot on your podcasts and on your stories is, always be tinkering. And so if I took a certain line on a downhill run one day and that's great. Well, why don't I try to go over the more difficult line, see if I can do that? And if I don't, that only makes me want to do it even more. If I failed the first time, I want to go back and do it because I want to say that I can do it. And then once you've done it the one time, you've got the confidence going into it again that um, you know that you can do it because you've done it, and therefore you just do it. And then it's always like, what's the next step? And it's here in Colorado Springs. It's about 2 hours to any of the ski resorts. And so one of the things I like about mountain biking versus snowboarding, I still love snowboarding, is that with snowboarding, it's not a full day, or I'm sorry, with mountain biking, it's not a full day event, because with traveling 2 hours each way plus skiing, that's all day. Whereas mountain biking, I live right here on the west side of town, so I can just leave from my house, go out and bike for an hour or 2 hours and be done. So it's I was born pretty athletic, so I was blessed to have some kind of natural athleticism, and so it's something that I put in the effort, and I started seeing the results, which really only added more fuel to the fire. Um, I'm excited about where I can go from here, and I'm excited about the journey that I've had, and I've met some really good people through mountain biking. My girlfriend and I share a passion for mountain biking, so we get out and do some pretty great rides. We spent some time in Moab recently, so it's just something I never really expected to fall in love with mountain biking like I have, but it's I'm in it.
That's awesome. Yeah, the little bit I've dabbled in it, I probably have fallen off more than I've stayed on. But it's definitely a challenge. I like that. Some of the videos that I see you post and things that you do, I can't imagine. I can't do those narrow lines, and that's crazy. But yeah, I can't take full credit for that. To always be tinkering. I stole that from Dan too. He started that with, obviously, with his archery, always tinkering with his bow, set up his arrows, and he talks. I went to his camp last year, and I'm going to go, or I guess this year, and I'm going to go again next year. And he talks about that same concept, and I love spreading that message of always be tinkering. And today's actually, Tinkering Tuesdays. I want to make that a thing, but tinkering with everything in your life. I was never much of a Legos guy growing up. When I thought of tinkering, and even now, I still kind of think of like Legos and engineers and messing with machines. But in all reality, tinkering with your bike setup, or tinkering with the line that you take, or when you're in school, as we're suffering through the MBA program right now, getting ready to get done with that. Tinkering with the way you study, the way you apply the things that you learn. Maybe, this lesson wasn't as productive as you wish it would have been because someone went off on a tangent during class, but, taking something from that, there's always something you can tinker with. And I do love that message. I think it's awesome that, and then you found through that a community, and also, a new relationship that kind of has been, attracted to you by you being the happiest and best yourself, who you are. And I think that's awesome. I kind of want to go back a little bit to some things that you've gone through in your past. And we talked about this during residency when you came out to Utah for the MBA program, and how you were with some of your friends from Ogden from your youth, and they're kind of stuck in what you and them used to do. They still talked about their glory days in high school, and you've like well moved on from that. Not to say that you're, well, no, you've got a better life. I was going to say, not to say that you're a better person, but you're a better person. You've evolved, you've moved on from those things. So as much as you feel comfortable with, I know there's a lot of people out there that are dealing with either toxic relationships, whether it be with a friend, a significant other, both. They feel stuck, that they can't get out of that rut. What's something that you did? We'll start with, your friends, that you were able to get out of that situation and leave that toxicity behind to improve your life.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it would have been probably about 2004. We had just graduated from high school and had a really close knit group of friends. This was when I was living in Ogden. We had all dabbled in some drugs at different points in high school, and we really, like, where it got into trouble for me was we started. I guess it would have been my junior year of high school. A friend had introduced me to smoking meth, which was kind of a big thing at the time. I don't know if it's still a big thing there now, but and I just absolutely loved it. I went kind of deep into that for a pretty quick period. I think I was, I had some family members kind of come swoop me out of that environment, kind of not by my choice, about 6-7 months after I had got into it, and really I think that saved my life. Ended up coming back to Utah after I had gotten clean and everything, and it was about 2004, and a lot of my friends were still doing it. They were respectful. They wouldn't do it around me. They knew I didn't do it. And then I guess it was the girlfriend that I had at the time. She was like my high school sweetheart, and we had split up recently, and she started doing meth with my friends. And it was just something I really, really struggled with. And I thought, this isn't what I want for myself. I don't want to live this life. And so I just decided it was time for me to go. My sister was living in Kansas City, doing her going to medical school, and it was my spring break. I was going to Weber State at the time. Took my spring break, drove to Kansas City, and kind of was chatting with her about it, saying I feel like I need to do something different. And she kind of encouraged me to just make the leap, and so I did. I started applying to some schools in Kansas City and got accepted, and decided to make the move. And that was the biggest, probably the scariest thing that I had done up to that point in my life, because I had moved before. I moved from Colorado to Utah, then Utah to Texas during that kind of get my life back on track period, and then back to Utah. But those were all kind of family moves. This was the first time I was going out on my own, so it was pretty scary. And but I decided to make the leap, and it ended up being a great decision. But I lost track with a lot of those guys. There was one of my closest friends. He come to find out, he didn't quit doing meth for probably another 10 years after I had left. And we're close now. Or we're closer again now. He's doing better. He doesn't do drugs anymore. I think he still drinks a little bit, but it's good that he's on his feet. But I can see that kind of the long-term damage of what that did to him. I mean, I still love him. He's still a great guy, but he's different because, 10 years of heavy drug use is going to do long-term damage to your brain. Um, and there's implications of the choices that he made. I mean, I agree with you that I'm not saying at all that I'm a better person, but due to some of the choices that some of my friends had made, they're felons. So that's going to limit the types of jobs they can get. It's going to limit, a lot of their opportunities in life. And coming back and kind of catching up on all these years that I had missed by talking to some of these old friends and getting together. It was great reminiscing and it was great seeing them. But it just makes me so thankful that I got out when I did, because that could have very easily been me. And I think sometimes with the stresses of my job and the MBA and all, life, regardless of what you've got going on, you've got stress. But it really kind of showed me that I've still got things pretty good. I mean, it could have gone a completely different way, and I don't think that would have been a better way at all.
No, definitely. And that's a really hard story. I personally have never dabbled in drugs, so I don't know the grip that can have on someone. But I know people that have, and I've seen what it can do to them. And so kudos to you, man, for making that decision. It's not easy to leave your hometown. It's not, and I would say that's a hometown. I know you grew up in Colorado, but also Ogden. You had a good group of friends. You graduated high school there, and you were going to college. Like, you had a tight knit group of friends there. And the fact that you were conscious enough to realize that this wasn't the path that you wanted to go down. And obviously, from the little limited knowledge that I have about uh, methamphetamine, it's just that's one of the harder things to get rid of. That gets a grip on people and doesn't ever want to let go. And so that's awesome that you're able to get out of that situation. And I agree. I agree with you as far as completely removing yourself from that situation. It's good that you had family members, and you said your sister, right? That was out in medical school in Kansas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that you had someone that was willing to provide that support, but you also did your part. And that's the biggest thing that I always tell people. I will give anyone the support that they need if I'm seeing that they're willing to put in some work. It sounds like your sister was the same way. She gave you some advice, but you put in the work. She didn't apply to colleges for you out there in Kansas. She didn't pack your bags and drive you out to Kansas. She just provided an opportunity and you took it. And I think that's something that, you could probably always look back on that moment where you had that kind of awakening where you were like, I just need to get out of here. And then you had people that were reaching out to you. So that's awesome. And that's amazing that your sister was willing to do that for you. I think that's something that a lot of people can learn from as well. If you're in a spot like what you were saying, maybe you've got stressors going on. She was obviously stressed going through medical school, but still willing to show that love and that charity towards you, obviously as her brother, but someone who is suffering and wanted to get out of that. That's amazing. And that takes some strength from you, dude. And that's awesome that you're able to do that and to come back to that situation years later and see where you would have most likely ended up. I bet that was probably a big eye opener for you to see, because you're successful. You're really successful in what you do. I mean, come on, you got the cutest puppy in the world. You got an awesome girlfriend. You're into mountain biking. You live in some of the most beautiful country out there in Colorado. And I mean, you've got an awesome life. And just to see that one little change of saying, okay, I'm done. I'm heading down this different path. Just like you were saying, choosing that different line on the mountain bike. And then I'm sure it wasn't easy. You probably got denied to a couple schools, and, you had some other situations that, maybe were hurdles that you had to get over. It wasn't just a smooth sailing over to your sister's house, but you still continue down that path. And so that's awesome. That's great to hear. And then to go into, did your girlfriend follow you out to Kansas City? Cause you were saying there was a girlfriend in Kansas City as well, the toxic relationship out there.
No, the girl from Utah, she stayed. She's always lived there. we've stayed in touch, through social media. She's doing great. She's married, got some beautiful kids. But the toxic relationship was in Kansas City was a girl that I had met in college in Kansas City. And,
Gotcha.
as far as I know, I think she's still out there, but we're, of all the relationships, we don't stay in touch. So.
Yeah. And so, and then, I mean, so you went from, you got out of the toxic situation, you moved out to Kansas City, were things good for a while, and then you fell kind of back into some old habits, routines, when you met this girl, or did it just kind of, I mean, what happened there? Just kind of a
Well,
brief
really,
overview.
yeah, I guess I kind of alluded to it a little bit here. I think the habits were happening the whole time. I think the reason her and I had clicked, the girl from Kansas City that I had met in college, was that she had a lot of the same habits. So I've got a really addictive personality. Doing my days with meth showed me that, and I
Mountain
think
biking, that's not addictive.
there.
CrossFit, that's not a
I was gonna get to that at some point. Was that I think I've thankfully have shifted my addictions towards things that are a little bit healthier. Um, but definitely, through college, even before I started working in the bar, alcohol was a huge part of my life. Even back into high school, when I think about it, um, so much of it, I just kind of became the party guy, and that was just kind of how I was known. It was easier being that I was at a new college. I joined a fraternity, and it was just like that. That was easy for me to fit in because it was this party lifestyle, and oh, hey, I can party, and I got pretty good at it. And before long, I got a job at a bar, and ended up working there for, I think, close to about 6 years. And in Kansas City, the bars are open till 3 in the morning, and then you got to clean up. So you don't get done with work till 5 a.m. Well, so you kind of live the life of a vampire, and before too long, you end up kind of similar to the days when I was doing meth. It's like, the circle that you end up running with ends up only being other vampires, because they're just, everybody else has got to work in the morning, and so they're not up at 5 a.m. But so it quickly became more than a job. It really became a lifestyle where we were drinking, to celebrate, drinking when you're happy, drinking when you're sad, drinking because you're at work. It's just, you're just always drinking. At least we were. And it just got to be a bad situation, and it was like that for years, really. The girl worked at a bar as well, and I think I remember when we met, I thought, like, man, this girl can party like we can. She's awesome, and we got along so great at first, and then it just turned really bad, before too long. And yeah, so it was, looking back, I wish her the very best and all that, but it's a very good thing that we're not in each other's lives anymore, because we're just kind of like oil and water, and when you throw a little alcohol in there, it only makes it a lot worse. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting too. So it wasn't, again, not a smooth sailing. You made a decision, and you were done with that lifestyle. I think it's super important that you identified that you've got that addictive personality, and channeling that into other things rather than just trying to stifle it. I'm the same way. I call it competitiveness, but I'm addicted to success and competition, I guess. And I try and channel that energy into those situations. It's the same for me with and well, we'll go into that in a minute, but just the fact that you recognize that you fell into those kind of same habits. And I think a lot of people fall into those comfort habits. Now, um, when I say comfort, obviously looking back, you're probably like, I wasn't very comfortable, I was miserable. But at the time, that was your comfort, that was your blanket, that was your whatever, your warm, your warm blanket at night when you go to bed, or whatever it is that keeps you comfortable. But that's what it was for you. And at that moment, that's what you needed. I feel like a lot of people deal with that, especially in their journey for fitness or health. I notice that a lot of people fall into those habits because it's hard to change. And I joke because I used to, when I hit my heaviest at 240, and I'm only 5'9", so I was pretty big dude. I was strong. I was still in the gym every day, but I was not eating right and I wasn't happy. And I was having lower back pains and knee issues and feet problems whenever I'd hike up the mountain. Um, and for me, uh, my comfort was just eating whatever I wanted to eat. And you eat to celebrate, and that's kind of a cultural thing too. Everyone eats to celebrate. We always have to have birthday cake. You always have to overeat in Thanksgiving. You always have to overeat at any celebration. There's always some sort of something to eat. And I think that, as you find, I would joke and I'd smack my belly and I'd say, man, I invested a lot of money into this. Why would I want to get rid of it? Right. There's a lot of time and money right here. And
I like that.
yeah, and it's true. I mean, think about all the freaking Happy Meals and stuff that you put into that belly that make you fat. I, once I finally, like, my joking was masking my pain, right? And I wasn't really happy or comfortable. Same thing in your situation. It sounds like you were comfortable with the drugs and then you were comfortable with the alcohol, the party lifestyle. But then you made that move and you're like, you know what, screw it. I'm getting out of here and I'm going to Colorado. I'm getting out of this relationship. And again, relationship with friends, with the quote unquote vampires, right? That group, the party animals. And this girl that didn't want to make that change. She wanted to stay in her blankie, in her comfort zone in Kansas City. And you said, screw it, I'm going back out to Colorado. What got you to go to Colorado? Just family, or what was it?
Well, I pretty quickly, after about that 6 years or so, I was started kind of look around, and I worked in a bar district in Kansas City. So it was, almost every door was a bar. It was about a maybe four square blocks that was mostly all bars. And over the years, I got to be good friends with a lot of the other employees of the different bars. And, when I referred to other vampires, that's who I mean. And so I kind of got to take a look at what down that road looks like. So if I stay on this train, I can look down the tracks and see what it looks like. And I knew that's not what I want for my life. And I totally can understand why people can get sucked into the bar industry, because it's fun. It's great. You get to meet a lot of people, you make a lot of money, you have great hours, but when you think about it, it's like, I don't want this to be my forever job. I mean, we had a couple guys at the bar that I worked at, one in particular that he'd been working there like 20 years. He was like 45 years old being a bartender. That's like, I'm not nothing against bartenders, but I'm just saying it was like, I didn't want that to be my forever story. I remember people from college, some years after college, coming back to Kansas City and, oh, what are you up to? Oh, are you still just bartending? And just those two words in front of bartending, still just, to me, that was like, it was just a little stab. And they weren't trying to be rude or anything, but it was more of like it was a twisting of a knife that was already in me, of like, deep down, I know I'm not advancing my life at all, but the money's too good and I'm having too good of a time to do anything about it. And the catalyst that really made me make that jump was, my dad was living here in Colorado, and he was, in his mid 70s at the time, I think, and he had smoked his whole life. And so he was having some pretty serious issues. He was in the hospital, and the doctor had called us, and I remember it was March, just right around March of 2013. And the doctor said, he's not gonna. No, it was March 13th. It was March 13th. He's not going to die today or tomorrow, but he's probably never going to get out of the hospital. And so that day, I decided, I was like, I'm moving to Colorado and I'm quitting smoking, because I'd been smoking for, I think, about 11 years. And and I just started making the moves to do it. I started talking to the company that I worked with in Kansas City, ended up transferring out here, and just kind of piece by piece just made it work. I had, thankfully, the support of my sister and brother-in-law. They were instrumental in getting me out here, and helping connect me to some of the people that I needed to be connected to once I got here. But yeah, it was definitely one of the more positive moves. You mentioned that, I decided to leave that one life and go to, I left Kansas City to go here, and get out of that lifestyle. And To some degree, I did. I came here that first year when I was still with that girl. I was still drinking pretty heavily. A lot of times it was just drinking by myself at home because I had this little apartment, and I didn't have, for the early period, I didn't really have a lot of friends. And the stuff between her and I was not going well. So, I used that blanket in drinking. And after we had split up, and that was when I really decided I need to make better health choices for myself and join the gym, and started to really try to curb my drinking by doing things kind of similar to some of the things that you've mentioned on the podcast, like 75 hard. I would do maybe one component of that. Like I would say, I'm going to not drink for 30 days, and I remember at the time that was tough, and that 31st day I was drinking. And over the time I thought, okay, I'm a little more in control of this, and I was lying to myself for a long time about that. I definitely wasn't. My time in Colorado I wasn't drinking as often, but when I did drink, I typically would still drink in excess. There's so many things that I can't, in my mind, that I just think back of, that I'm just embarrassed of events like weddings. My sister's wedding, I got embarrassingly drunk at. A lot of important events. I can't take that back. And it was something over the years. I think in the back of my mind kind of knew that this has got to stop at some point. Like you need to stop doing this. And I think I was really afraid of making that commitment of giving up alcohol like I did doing meth and then tobacco. But I guess it was September of 2019. I finally made the decision. At the time, I didn't say I'm going to quit this forever. I had made a really stupid decision after drinking a little too much, and I decided I just need to walk away for a little bit. And really, as the days started to kind of mount up, it kind of became. I mean, you'd understand this. I mean, it kind of became, my competitive side came out, and it was like, well, how high can I get this number of days without any alcohol? And then it was, well, man, I'm getting pretty close to a half a year. And I got to that point. It's like, well, I definitely don't want to mess that up. Let's see if we can get it to a year. And then, it was right around the 1 year mark. I kind of started thinking, is this, are you ready to say, hey, I'm done with this forever? And I came to the conclusion that I don't necessarily need to make that decision. Like, to me, I make a daily decision. Most days it's subconscious. That I'm gonna not drink today. I think I just looked on my app on my phone. I think today's day 443 that I haven't had any alcohol, and that's something that I'm proud of. I mean, I don't think that alcohol is a bad thing. I think that some people are better suited to handle alcohol than others, and I'm not a person that's in that camp. And so it took me far too many years to really learn that, I think. But I just know that it's something that I'm always gonna, I think, whether I have a drink again in my life or not, it's something I'm always gonna have to be mindful of, because it's, there's societal pressures. It's almost like expected that people are gonna drink in our society. I've learned in these 443 days that I haven't been drinking, people don't know how to handle it. When you're at a business function, or just, you're out and you say, oh no, I'm just having water or something, people want to, it becomes a thing. It becomes a topic of conversation why you're not drinking, and it's like, it really bothered me at first. It doesn't bother me quite as much now, but it was, I think, one of the biggest things that was eye-opening to me about quitting that, because some of the other things everybody was really supportive in, but in quitting drinking, the people who I thought would be the most supportive, some of them weren't. Some of them kind of even mocked what I was doing and say, oh, you're just being too hard on yourself. And I kind of thought, like, well, you're this mentor figure for me. Like, can't you see I'm trying to better myself? Like, why would you, I would assume of all people, you would be on board with this, and I think he was just a little upset that he was losing the drinking buddy. But yeah, it's, the people that really care about me were supportive throughout this whole thing, and I'm really thankful for that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I I can't comprehend personally what it is to have, again, that grip of alcohol. Now I know there's some alcoholics in my family, and so that's another, like, not that I've never been tempted to drink alcohol. That's a blessing that I've had, but at the same time, like, I'm comfortable being around people that do drink, and I don't have a problem with that. And I actually kind of make a joke about it. Now I know, again, I'm more comfortable with it because I know I've never drank before. So I like to joke about it when people do make those conversations up. I'm like, come on, man. I'm a ginger that drinks souls. Like, that's what I do, right? I think I'm a soul snatcher. But like, I like to make jokes about it, make light of it, and it kind of goes away. But I can also understand from the point of view of someone who is like you, that is saying, this is a daily decision for me, which I want to go back to that in a minute, but that would be not comfortable to have those conversations. And I do find it interesting that it's almost like a crabs in a bucket mentality where, they feel like you need to drink too, or they feel bad about it. Well, they shouldn't feel bad about drinking if they're comfortable with that. And two, they should be comfortable with you drinking whatever you want. Like, if you showed up with a beer bottle and it was full of water, they wouldn't notice the difference. And no one else drinking your drink, right? So I've never completely understood that, except for the idea of now they're feeling comfortable around me, which I don't understand why. You know, um, I always found it funny when I would go to parties and people would drink around me in high school. I was always a designated driver, after high school, and legally people were able to drink. And it was funny to me. I always enjoyed it because people would say things that they normally, it was like a social lubricant. And I laughed. I had a good time being sober because I got to see all the silly things they were doing. but I can understand how that would be uncomfortable. And that's unfortunate, that you're noticing that people that you look up to as a mentor, and maybe they're not a mentor for your health, maybe they're more of a mentor in your career or other things. And I've had to take a step back and learn that as well, that even like maybe my dad or my grandpa or people that I always looked up to, recognizing that they're not perfect, but they can be my mentor in XYZ thing, maybe two or three things. But in this aspect, I don't want to look up to them because they're not the experts in that. So it's interesting that you've excuse me, that you've found that with some of your friends and people that you thought would be most supportive. I want to go back to you're saying your daily. Well, first of all, congratulations on 443 days. That's amazing, dude.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm not good at math, but that's more than a year. But that's amazing. That's really good. That's a big accomplishment, man. So you've overcome, hard drugs, tobacco, which is another. I grew up in North Carolina, and that I see tobacco everywhere. Everyone smokes. It's just a thing that people do. People are better at driving. My uncle tried to explain it to me one time that, like, he felt like he was missing an arm when he was trying to give up smoking. Like he got so used to manipulating his phone and driving and things with a cigarette that when he didn't have it, he felt weird, like he was missing a part of himself. So I can't imagine that being a comfortable situation either. So the fact that you gave up, the hard drugs and then tobacco and now alcohol, I love that you say it's a daily decision. So for some people that can be daunting. And that's that, but the way that you take it, and you're not making promises to yourself that you don't know if you're going to be able to keep, because if you say I'm never forever ever going to drink again, and then the day that you do have that drink, if you choose to, right, it's, you have the power, and if you choose to take that drink, now you've broken that promise to yourself. And I find that's super powerful. Promises that you make to yourself are more powerful than anything else in this world. I feel like, between, for those out there that believe in God, between you and God, those covenants that you make, which is the two-way promise, or a covenant that you make with yourself, it's obviously two ways because it's you and you. I think that's huge. And so being comfortable and knowing that you don't want to make a promise to yourself and then potentially breaking that, which would spiral you out of control. knowing that you broke a promise to yourself. Whereas if you make a daily goal to yourself, like, today I don't need that, and then that's a promise you can keep every single day. I think there's a lot of power in that. And then you look, like you said, you get competitive and you're like, I'm not going to let 6 months, 6 months, dude, that's a lot of work. I'm going to go for a year. I totally get that as well. That's awesome. And I apply that because I'm a bad spender. My wife's the saver. I'm the spender. And so I make it a game to where, like, if I want to save, it has to almost be like a competition, like, oh, I'm going to put this much in this account after this paycheck, like, oh man, I
Can you
upped the
do it?
energy. Right. Exactly. Like, I'm not going to spend it on this because this is more important, or going in and seeing my kids' college funds go up, or, things like that. Taking that competitive, because I'm addictive to, or I've got an addictive behavior, which is spending, it burns a hole in my pocket. Well, I'm just going to channel that into something else, same thing with fitness, health, food. Food is super addicting for me. Pizza is that's my kryptonite. I could eat a large pizza every day and never get tired of it. And finding recipes for me that allow me to eat that same amount for half to a quarter of the calories, is something that you just have to, again, going back to the tinkering and the daily promises to yourself, like, today I'm going to do this. And then, tinkering with, hey, that didn't taste so good last time, I'm going to add this, and to meet that goal, whatever it is. I think that's awesome. And it sounds like, it wasn't, again, smooth sailing. It wasn't just, I'm done, and you were done. You were done with one thing, you moved on to the next, and you were done with that, you moved on to the next, and then you were done with that. And so you're taking those steps, which is awesome. And again, I don't comprehend that specific struggle that you've had to deal with, because I haven't personally dealt with that, but I know that those are not easy things to overcome. And so I congratulate you on that. That's a big accomplishment. So
Thank you.
let me know how, or tell us a little bit here about how the outdoors kind of has played a role into that. Once you recognized, you broke up with that toxic relationship, you realized you were heavier than where you wanted to be. And then you realize, you looked around, you're like, wow, these mountains are not flat like Kansas. I'm not in Kansas anymore. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And what am I going to do with these big things out my back window? But what was kind of the spark that got you to go take advantage of those big old mountains?
It was almost like a big to-do list. It was kind of because I was in a new place. I mean, I had already been here about a year, but mentally I was still in Kansas City. Emotionally I was still in Kansas City for that year. And it wasn't until that relationship ended where it was like, okay, it's time for me to establish myself here and create a life for myself, because that previous year I was trying to create a life for what was going to be us. And but yeah, I just tried to be open to new experiences. And there's such beauty and peace in nature, whether you just go out for a small walk or something like that. You don't necessarily have to go crazy in the woods to get the benefits of it. I mean, it's just, I don't really know how to put it into words. Like, when you're connected with nature like that, when you're out in the woods, I mean, camping or doing those kinds of things, it's just a feeling that I can't really explain. It feels incredible. And I think my love for the outdoors has really, the roots really started to grow deep as my career had progressed. And I work in finance and corporate America, and so that's about as far away from the outdoors as you can get. And so it was, by the time weekends came around or vacations came around, it was like I couldn't wait to get out to the outdoors, because I'd been in an office all week. And like a lot of people, I love what I do, but I work to live and not live to work. So to me, I work so that I can do the things in the outdoors that I love. One of my current girlfriend, one of the reasons that we had, I think, clicked so well together is she's all about the outdoors too. She's a big trail runner. She's been skiing for a lot of years. I think she did a lot more like road biking, but when her and I got together, she got into mountain biking too. So it was just kind of
It's
a
better.
let's.
Mountain biking is better than road biking.
I would agree. Yeah, I
it's
would
like
agree.
it's like pounding the pavement versus trail running. I could trail run. I hate running.
Yeah, yeah,
Anyway,
yeah, yeah. I mean, she does the big ones. She's done, trail marathons in Moab. She did the Pikes Peak Marathon this last year, which was a long time goal of hers. And that's, Pikes Peak is one of the 14,000-foot mountains here in Colorado. It's just right in our backyard here. And so the Pikes Peak Marathon is you run up and down. There's the half, or the Pikes Peak ascent is just up. But I mean, just walking up that mountain's incredibly hard. And she went and ran up and down it. So
I was
I
gonna
think
say, you know
she,
that Kevin Hart meme where he like takes the microphone and he like peeks out from the side. He's like, "What?" Like
yeah.
that was my reaction just now when you're like, she ran up and down. I'm like, I just want to hike up and down that thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's impressive. I mean, the training that she put in to do it. And I mean, she had two pretty massive hip surgeries, I guess probably 4 or 5 years ago, and had to kind of relearn how to walk and everything. So reaching this goal for her, I mean, I unfortunately wasn't there. It was huge for her, and I'm really proud of her for doing that. But I think one of the things that I like about people that I want to have in my life is that kind of mindset of, I want to go do some really awesome things that are going to challenge me, and I think that's one of the things that I admire about you as well, is that, you're a very different Jonathan than the guy that I met in February of 2020. You physically look a lot different, but I would consider you the same, I would say, breed as I am in terms of your addiction. You're just addicted to some not harmful things, and you dive right in. I mean, with what you've done with bow hunting, with exercise, with the nutrition that thankfully, I mean, you keep us all up to date through your Instagram stories and stuff. But I mean, that is where you've put a ton of effort in, and the results show, not only in your physical appearance, but just your overall sense of happiness, and I one of the other things, I mean, I think I think those are one of the reasons why you and I clicked really well. But I don't necessarily have the same ingredients to this mix. But one of the other things I've really admired about you is that you're a really good family man. You're that was clear from day one. One of the first classes that you had spoke. I mean, you mentioned, I think, the fact that you don't work on Sundays, and a lot of the things that you discuss. I mean, you are dedicated to your family, and I don't have a family, other than my brothers and sisters and things like that. So I don't necessarily understand it, but I can tell you that, your family's very lucky to have you, because not all men are like you.
I appreciate that, man. Guys, I promise I didn't pay him to say any of that. Okay. So no, but for real, I appreciate that. It's some of those things, kind of like that promise that you make to yourself daily. One of my non-negotiables from the moment I started working was, I will not work on Sunday. I'll work all the Saturdays you want, and no matter how unfortunate that may be. But from the very young age of 14, 15, when I started working, all my job interviews, that was my one thing that I would tell them. I was like, I'll work nights, Saturdays, everything you want, but Sunday. And that stemmed from, my belief of my church belief that I have, or my religious belief of that day being dedicated to Christ when I was younger. And now that I've developed and I have my own family, the same thing, it's dedicated to my family. And so I appreciate that. Yeah, I try and share that with others. And that's the main reason why I share so much on Instagram. My wife says I post a little too much, but there's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes that I don't post because it's more sacred and close to me. But things that I do put up there is to hopefully motivate people so that they can develop that discipline, because, and I talked about this in the last podcast, that motivation is temporary. And that's why I post that quote every day. I post my nutrition. I hop on the story at least once a day, just to hopefully someone will be scrolling through and that gets them out of bed or off the couch or whatever to go do something. And then that consistency of just showing up will develop that discipline, kind of like what you've mentioned, that you do. It takes a lot of training. You just recently did something too that I wanted to bring up. Um, and we'll get into that in just a minute. Your was it 50 miles mountain bike
Oh,
ride?
the 50K. So I
50K.
guess it'd be about 30 some miles, 32, maybe
We'll say 50
33 miles.
miles. Okay.
That sounds better. Yeah.
Yeah, the 50K. Man, I've got flashbacks of my 5K row that I just did the other day. That was terrible. But no.
Yeah, that looked terrible.
um no, so yeah, it's definitely it's a motivation, because you were motivated to get into mountain biking and you had this motivation, then you were disciplined to go do that. So we'll talk about that in a minute. I love what you said. I know it's a phrase that gets used pretty often, but work to live, not live to work. I love that you understand that it's a means to an end. That's not your life. You don't dedicate your life to corporate America, to your job. You have a fur baby, and you've got a girlfriend, and you've got a love for the outdoors. And so once you clock out, you're done. You don't take that with you. You clock out and you're gone. Um, Something too that you've done that I thought was pretty cool. I don't think I'd be able to do it with kids. But I do like that you traveled with a trailer. You had that the RV behind you, or travel trailer, whatever people want to call it, but behind your awesome truck. And you lived out of the trailer for, what was it, about a year, right?
No, it was about 3 months. I mean, it felt
Okay.
like it could have been about a year. It
Yeah.
felt it was a long time. It was most all of last summer.
Mhm.
With the once they sent us home from work, I had my previous dog Juniper at the time, and she was a 12-year-old pit bull, and I was kind of thinking, I hope it's not her last summer, but if it is, I don't want her to spend her last summer just sitting here at home with me in my spare bedroom while I look at my computer all day. And got kind of the crazy idea to do it, and I started. We uh, I try to look at things from all angles before I dive head first. I mean, I'm all about diving head first, but I want to make sure that there's a couple feet of water underneath at least. So I was trying to figure out if I was going to make that work, and if I could make it work, could I do Zoom calls from? How could I make sure that I'm always connected to the internet? And it took a couple weeks of tinkering to figure it out, and finally just made the leap and got the trailer and hit the road. And it was one of the best experiences that I've ever had in my life. I was by myself, just me and my dog. My girlfriend would a few times she would fly out to where I was, and we'd spend maybe a long weekend together or something. But for the most part, it was just me and my dog in the woods. And she unfortunately passed away while we were on the road. We were I guess we were close to Lake Tahoe, and she had some cancer growing inside of her, and it became time I had to make that decision. And so, while as hard as that was to make that decision, anybody who's had to make that decision, they know that in that moment they're doing the right thing. As difficult as that was, it was almost beautiful in the same way, because I know for a fact that that dog had the best last 2.5 months that any dog could ever have. She got to see more of the country than most people see in their lifetime, and so the fact that she died on the trip, it put a damper in the trip, but it just made me that much more happy that I did it for her.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that kind of alludes to me that you'll be a great dad if you ever choose. Again, I don't force people into getting kids, because if you don't want to have kids, don't have kids. Please don't have kids if you don't want them. But if you do choose to have children, if you're treating, your fur baby that way, I can only imagine when, a child that's actually a portion you, and how you would treat them. But again, like I always tell people, I'm like, I always knew I was going to be a dad. I jumped right into it right after I got back from my mission, where I served in Mexico for 2 years. But that's something that I always knew. It was almost like a calling for me. Like I knew I was going to do that. I always tell people, I'm like, if you don't think you can handle kids, if you've got any kind of doubt like that, don't do it until you're ready.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's definitely not, it's not a status symbol or anything in my eyes anyway. It's just to me it's a blessing. And but anyway, that's awesome that you were able to do that trip. And I remember you mentioning that to me now. And that's awesome. That's awesome. So you, I mean, you've had, oh, go ahead.
Do you guys think you're done with having kids, or
Yeah,
are you wanting to have more?
no, my son Asher is enough for me.
Yeah. That was the nail in the coffin.
Uh, no, Esther is she's a ball of sunshine, and Asher is the future lawyer. So everything's an argument with that kid. Everything needs an explanation. Everything's a word game. And no, I just think like my wife and I realized that we want to put everything we can into our kids, and then and then after that we want to have time for ourselves. You know, we want to do things together as well. Because so my wife had 3 kids previous to us getting married, and so we never really had that just me and her time. It's
Mhm.
always, it jumped into insta dad, and then and us, you know, being parents. And so yeah, we've kind of discussed that, and that's kind of what we're aiming for. We want to give the most that we can to our kids, make them productive members of society, hopefully, and then kick them out. And then when they have kids, we'll go steal the grandkids and take them away, so so we can return them whenever they're being spoiled brats. No, okay. But yeah, no, it's yeah, it's a big decision to have kids. And I mean, you just adopted a puppy, and you seem to be taking really good care of her, and I'm sure she's living the spoiled best life that she can. um but I just want to ask you a couple more things here, because I love that you mentioned that it's just kind of an intangible when you get outdoors, whether you're mountain biking. Again, you take some awesome videos, and the ones that you share anyway, I kind of freaks me out because I'm like, I don't know how you, like, I wouldn't even want to walk down that, let alone ride a bike down that. But and then, you know, you do a little, you dabble in hunting. You've gone out at least the last 2 years that I know of, and hunted for elk during rifle season. But you know, just that you mentioned just getting out and unplugging, there's something that is, there's an intangible there, and that's kind of what draws me as well to the outdoors. I love sharing it with my kids, just like you were mentioning, you love sharing it with your puppies. And my kids, my family, my loved ones, I love that. I love, you know, when they ask me, hey dad, when are we going to go on a hike again? Because sometimes it's a fight. You know, sometimes I'm not gonna lie, on our Sunday hikes, it's dragging Asher because he doesn't want to, he just wants to relax and hang out. And then this last Sunday, he was like, Dad, when, you know, when are we going to go on our hike today? And so, you know, things like that, and creating those habits. I
Pat
love
on the
it.
back to you right there.
I know,
When he's
right?
asking for
Yeah, that was
that.
the happy dad moment. I couldn't let him see that though. I was like, yeah, I guess you're right, Asher. You know, like,
Gotta play it off, yeah.
right? Yeah, you got to make him feel like he's got some control there. But no, yeah, it's awesome. I love it. There's times where, um, you know, when I go, there's certain hunts that I go on that are a little bit not as demanding physically, like going turkey hunting. There's a property that my friend has that during the private turkey hunting season, or private property season here in Utah, I'll take my kids with me, and they can enjoy that whether or not we get anything. You know, teaching them that we don't always get something when I go out. This is what daddy does when he is out hunting, etc. And then when I do harvest an animal, especially if it's close here, you know, bringing that home to them in the back of the truck, and they can see, you know, I explain where the arrow went in, or where where the bullet went in, so they can have that experience and know that meat just doesn't just pop up in the freezer.
Mhm.
You know, that an animal gave its life for that. And
Yeah.
so all of that's, you know, pretty special. Having them test out different ways that I cook the meat. Unfortunately, my wife is still not convinced that game meat is good to eat. It's not that she doesn't like the flavor of it, no matter how I cook it. But you know, the kids have tried heart, they try different roast and steaks, and so just introducing them into that, to the point where actually Asher had to draw what his favorite food was. And he drew a deer on the plate that they had.
Oh, that's great.
And then what was the other thing that he drew? His least favorite thing. And he drew me. And I was like, what the heck?
Oh,
Like,
that's right. Yeah.
yeah. And then he was like, what do you mean? I said, well, you don't like me? Like, what in the world? He's like, no, it's you without a deer, but I couldn't draw the deer because it's not there.
Yeah,
Oh, that kid cracks me up. But
that's great.
anyway, I just want to ask you real quick, just to kind of wrap things up. A big question that I ask myself, and what drives me, the underlying of everything that I do. What is your why? What is your why? I don't know if you've read this book. Let me grab it really quick. I've suggested this book to so many people. I don't know if you've read it or not. I don't know if it's backwards to you or not.
To start with why.
Yeah. So have you
Yeah,
read
I've
that?
I've not read that. No.
Okay. You should grab a copy of that. That's an amazing book by Simon. I'm going to mispronounce his last name, Sinek. So Simon is normal spelling, and then Sinek. And I recommend that to just about anyone. That was one of the first books that I started when I did 75 Hard the first time in 2020. And it just talks about finding your inner, what is the reason you get up every morning? And what is the reason why you are disciplined in what you do? And that can be anything with your career, that can be with the outdoors, your fitness, nutrition, all the things that I'm passionate about. But what would you say is your why?
Yeah, I actually have been thinking about that a little bit recently, because you must have mentioned it on one of your podcasts or in one of your stories or something. And I got to thinking of what is my why? I mean, I've got to have one because I've gotten this far, I guess, in life, and really the best answer I could come up with is just to be a better version of myself. I know that there's always going to be a better one more step to take that I can take to better myself and improve myself. Um, I want to have as much fun in my life as I can possibly have, and and so the things that I like to do for fun, a lot of them are physically demanding. So the better I am, the better shape that I'm in, and the better fueled my body is, the better I'm going to perform doing the things that I love, that bring me all the fun, that really makes life worth living. Um, so I think it's an internal why, which when I came to that conclusion, I kind of thought, like, is that even can that be my answer? I don't know. But I think that's the best answer I can give, is just that I want to be a better version of myself tomorrow than I was today, and just keep doing that every day.
I like it. I like it. Yeah, it's super important to have that, and for you to have overcome the things that you overcome, you have to have that. And sometimes, I ask a lot of people, that anyone that I have a good sit down conversation about this kind of, as whether it be nutrition, health, fitness, outdoor stuff, I'll ask them that, what's your why? And a lot of people don't have an answer, but I kind of challenge them to think about it, because if they're wanting to make a change, if you're wanting to make those changes that you've made in your life, you have to have something underlying that is stronger than the will to go and drink, or the will to go back to your old habits. You have something there. And then once you recognize that, it's again going back to the choice that you're giving yourself the power, not the thing, the power. And so when you have a why, you have the power, what your why is and why you're doing what you do. And for you, obviously, not having kids or a spouse, so you do have a significant other, you've got a girlfriend, but also having that internal why is even more important, because you're holding yourself to that. And that will eventually, like for me, my why is that I want to help people live better and more successful lives, including myself, right? But I want to help people live healthier so that they can enjoy their family, their loved ones, their friends, the outdoors. And that entails nutrition, fitness, and faith in something. Uh, and that's why I focus on those things, is because that's what I want. That is my why. And so, obviously that starts with my family. and then that moves out to my extended family and friends that I call family, and then it goes out from there. Anyone who wants to, who's kind of drawn to that circle, is that's why I do it. And so yours, obviously you want to make the best of your life. You want to make the most of your life, and you want to enjoy everything that life has to offer. Your puppy, your significant other, uh, work. You want to become the best at your work. You want to become the best mountain biker that you can. You want to, I don't know, maybe you want to run Pikes Peak. I mean, maybe you want to die. I don't know. No,
That's
but
probably what would happen. Yeah.
right. Man collapses on Pikes Peak. No,
Yeah.
no, but really though, like that's super important. And reviewing that, once a week, and it can change. Obviously, if you get married and you have kids, it might change slightly.
I think it
But
should.
even then, you still want to be healthy because you want to make the best out of life. And at that point, the best out of life may change from just adventuring to, making the best life for your kids, but you're
Mhm.
still wanting to make the best out of your life, right? So finding that why is super important. So yeah, I definitely highly recommend reading that book to you and anyone that's listening. That's definitely one of my favorite books. Along with, I've got a whole litany of other books that I could recommend, but that's definitely a big one. Um, well, cool.
Yeah, I'll check that out. Thank you.
Yeah. Do you have anything else that you want to share before we wrap up?
Just thank you for having me on here. This was a really cool experience. I know you had a recent milestone with having a thousand listeners on the podcast. So this is I've never done anything like this. So this was awesome. It was great, kind of learning a little bit. I mean, we've gotten to know each other pretty well over the last couple of years, but just I don't know that we've had a sit down conversation like this for an hour. So this was nice, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you for being willing to share your story, because I we didn't delve this deep into it during the residency, but I knew there was something there that I feel like a lot of people can get value out of, because you've overcome some significant struggles that, again, I can't share because I've never done that. And to me, that's super impressive. Those are things that a lot of people struggle with. And then even just the idea of having that comfort, that blanket, what I would call it, something that people go back to repeatedly over and over and over again. They get stuck in that rut. The fact that you've been able to get out of three of them, at least, if not more, if you're including, any other toxic relationships that you've had, you've overcome a lot in your life, and you're becoming a better you every day. But you're also extremely successful at what you do as of right now. And so that to me was impressive, and why I wanted to bring you on today. So thanks for joining us. And yeah, as I always say, get out, live your life, and love it.